I've got some more tips about how to use the debugger. So I've got the same application as last time. I've made a couple changes to it, but let's run this application and see what happens. Alright, we get a null reference exception. So let's stop and let's set a breakpoint in order to debug and investigate what's happening here. So let's debug again and see current password is ABC, the first item in this array here. And if I continue, I get the next one. I'm pressing F5 to continue, by the way. Press F5 again, next one, F5, and again F5. Oh, we have a value that's set to null in our list. So now let's step over and step into, step over, step into, and okay, it's going to try to iterate over the characters of a null string, and that's where we get the null reference exception. So that's all fine and dandy, but the problem is that we had to press continue 4 times before we got to our null value. So that might not seem like an issue for this example app, but in a real application it could be a list of like thousands of items, and you may not be sure which value is causing the issue, or even if you do, you may not be sure what is the code path that it takes before it gets to that exception. So if I want to avoid pressing continue potentially thousands of times, Visual Studio has a feature for that. So if I mouse over the breakpoints, I see settings or disable. Let's go to settings and see what it gives me. So now I get this window, and I can click this checkbox for conditions. So if I enter a value in this field, Visual Studio will only hit this breakpoint if this Boolean condition is true. So now I could put in here, so I want it to only hit the breakpoint when the current password is null. So now if I debug, the very first time it hits this breakpoint, I can look in my locals window and I see that current password is null. And then I can step over and step into until I find the line that fails. So in addition to just setting a condition, by the way, I can reach the breakpoint settings also by right-clicking on the breakpoint and clicking conditions. So in addition to a conditional breakpoint, I could choose to do other actions. So maybe if I don't want to actually break, I can leave this checkbox, check continue code execution. So maybe I just want to display something in the output window. So this is kind of like doing a debugger.log, except I don't have to change the code. And if I want to show something in the output window, I can do a custom string. And I can also embed values within my string. Like maybe I want to see the length of the array that was passed in. And so if anything I embed in curly braces is going to read the value of that variable from the code. Also, if I hit $, I get these other values that I can display. So displaying what function I'm in, that's kind of obvious at this point. The caller, that might be useful in many cases. Maybe you have a reusable function that's only failing when it's called by a certain caller. TID is one I found really useful, thread ID. So if you have a multi-threaded application, then if multiple threads are running the same block of code and you want to be debugging only one thread, then you can display the thread ID on the first breakpoint, and then you can use that value in your condition so that you only hit breakpoints on the same thread. That I found that very useful. So other things you can do: disable breakpoint once hit. So maybe it's a huge loop, like thousands of items, and you've got a condition for the first item you want to step through, but you don't want to debug other instances of that condition being true. And you can also make it conditional on other breakpoints being hit. So I don't have any other breakpoints here, but this might be useful if maybe you have some if-else logic within your loop, and then much lower down is the part you want to step through, but you only want to step through if a certain branch of your if-else logic was hit. That might be useful there. So let's close this and debug again. And we get the null reference exception, but if I go to my output window, now I see the message that I just logged as well. So no caller available. That's because it's the main method where I set the breakpoint. So we're at the top level function, there is no caller. I get the thread ID over here, and here I see my custom message with the variable embedded into it. These are all tricks you can use to investigate not only when your program is not working as expected, but even when you're testing a code change before it's been released to QA or production. This is the best way to really confirm that your code is doing what you want it to be doing. That's it for today. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share. See you later.